we're live. Is this thing working? I bet it is. What's happening, everybody? All right, so if you're watching this, chances are your Saturday did not go quite as well as you had hoped. Talking about the cost of going 9's. Monologue's going to be a little bit thick this evening because I've got to cover a lot of ground. But what I do want to talk to you guys about is a topic that has been absolutely drug all over the place, and at least for recent memory. And one of the issues that I run into is guys are always telling me, messaging me, man, it's so much cheaper to build a Mustang. It's so much easier to build a Camaro or whatever. And it's always in reference to the Hellcat, because the Hellcat is that yardstick for the performance into this thing. So what I wanted to talk about is the real cost to go 9's. What does it actually cost to go 9's for a few different platforms, to give you guys an idea for what it really takes. Now, a couple of caveats here. First and foremost, if your end goal is to run 9's with your car, I certainly hope that you've brought to the table quite a bit of cash, because it isn't cheap. In fact, some of the quote unquote cheaper cars to make go fast, yeah, they end up looking eerily similar in terms of cost, plus durability, mind you, to a Hellcat. So anyway, let's start off with the Hellcat. Typical Hellcat will run usually 1080s stock on a tire. And by the way, we're going to be talking about these cars on a drag pack tire and wheel setup. It is absolutely not even worth your time to take your car to the drag strip at these types of power levels. It is downright dangerous, folks. So word to the wise, if you're going to be building a car like this, you are now in the realm of having to run your car around on drag radials or on some type of a sticky tire, certainly at the drag strip, because the second these cars go into power, they're going to blow the treads right off of any street tire. It's basically dangerous at that point. So Hellcats, I mean, what does it really cost to go 9's? Well, first of all, we got to start off with where do you start with these cars? And typically they'll run a 1090 on a drag pack, bone stock, and good air. And one other thing before I get any deeper into this, I am not telling you how to build a car that is a 9-second car. I'm telling you how to put together a car that will get you a 9-second time slip. That's something that has to be understood coming into this. A 9-second car goes 9's no matter what the weather is. A 10-second car goes 10's whether it's 90 degrees or 30 degrees, right? I mean, the whole spectrum has got to be covered with a 10-second or a 9-second, in this case, time slip. By the way, yes, the shop is here right next to Velocito, and it's been a real pretty night, so there will be folks going out there. So if you hear that, that's what's going on. So a stock Hellcat, you're looking at basically 1080s, 1090s are almost a given for those cars on a drag pack in decent air. Add to that a pulley, injectors, a tune, and maybe a shot of boostane. Maybe a shot of race gas, but not even tuned for race gas, just to keep things on the safe. And you got yourself a car that will get you a 9-second time slip. Grand total for that, you're looking at around, you could do it on the cheap for actually less than this, but to go deep into the 9's would cost you about 9 or 10 grand. Taking your, if you bought it used, $50,000 Hellcat, and giving you basically a $60,000 9-second car. Now, to just get a 9-second time slip instead of 9 grand, you could probably cut the lower pulley off of that, just put a smaller pulley on it. Takes about $1 grand out of the equation, so about $8 grand. And you've got yourself a solid, at least in decent air, 9-second car. No need to upgrade the transmission. No need to upgrade anything, frankly, because the car comes with all of these upgraded components already. And yes, they are a little bit heavy, but I will tell you this, they are built like a tank. Yeah, they kind of weigh about as much as a tank, but you can beat on them mercilessly and they just don't seem to have any issues. Next on the list, the Mustang. We're going to have to talk about the Mustang. I am not going to talk about the 392. The reason why I'm not going to talk about the 392 is because see Exhibit A, Hellcat. Look, if the 392 had an HP 90 from the factory, it would be a solid platform to build a hot rod out of. But the problem is when he's trying to start building significant power with these things, the transmission is going to be your limiting factor. And by the way, that's also going to be the limiting factor in the other packages that I'm going to throw out here. But just know that when you have a big brother like the Hellcat building a boosted 392, the same money is just, you're not going to be money ahead. You can always get and flip a Hellcat for good money. Seriously built 392 car, there's going to be it's going to be a tough sell for a lot of folks. So just know that going into it. I'm not even going to talk about 392s for this deal. Not yet anyway. Mustangs. You're going to be coming into this boosted. And God, don't you hate it when you get out of the gym and you just can't quit sweating? I hate that. I even got the AC cranking over here. Anyway, Mustang. You're going to be into that car for about 35 grand typically. You might be able to pick one up for 30, 27, something like that. But if you've got a decent later model Mustang, 10-speed auto, somewhere around 30 grand, at least one that you'd want to be seen driving in. Boosted scenarios here, you're going to be into that car for about 20 grand. And so where am I getting this number from? Well, remember one of the caveats is that you're trying to build in some level of durability with these cars. And for the guys that I know of that I've talked to at the drag strip, one of the issues that they run into is parts failures with Mustangs. Time and time again, I'll hear guys, just because I got friends of mine with Mustangs, I've been involved in builds with the Mustangs. One of the issues that the guys run into is transmission issues, axle problems. Obviously, you've got oil pump gears that are going to be in the mix with this that keep driving the cost of durability to get that car into the 9's up and up and up and up and up and up. And you're not even guaranteed a 9-second time slip, but you can get awfully close. The walking around number, including transmission upgrades, whatever kind of boost you want to run with that car. Most guys might look at a positive displacement supercharger. It's kind of the sexier of the combinations is always turbo, but that can get a little bit dicey and expensive. Anyway, long story short, you're looking at about $22,000 the way that I saw it, between the tuning, the transmission upgrades, the boost method, whichever one that's going to be, at about 12 grand, give or take. You've got exhaust, you've got catbacks, you've got axles, drive shafts, the whole bit. It just keeps adding up and up and up with that car to the point where, yes, you are into the thing for about $22,000 to do it right. Now, can you do it for cheaper than that? Absolutely you can. And when that car blows up at the drag strip or frags itself on a high speed pass on the freeway and it's on the back of a tow truck, you're going to be paying for those parts anyway. Get it done on the first build. Cry now, not cry later. And that brings me to the other point when it comes to building these cars up. You are going to be at a significant disadvantage when it comes to, again, that resale value. But think of it like this a step further. $22,000 that you will never see again. Now, granted, you can pull those parts off of that Mustang and sell them on, but you're going to be getting 40, 30, maybe if you're doing well, 50% on the dollar on that deal. So you've got a $55,000 proposition. Of that, you're never going to see $10,000 of that ever again. With the Hellcat, you've got a $60,000 proposition, and you're probably going to get all that money back because Hellcat owners don't have any problem buying pulleys that are used for about 80% of their value. and injectors are pretty easy to flip because there's always somebody wanting to upgrade their cars. But again, the dollar signs just aren't as high in terms of modifications on the Hellcat. And we're talking about two cars, the packages that should run 960s regardless of how you look at them. And that's really, again, the criteria here. 960s, 970s in clean air. Oh yeah, and as an automobile would be defined. I'm not going to get into weight reduction and all this other stuff because I got to be honest with you guys. I've seen people get stupid with weight reduction, and it basically turns a really nice car into, it's just a race car at that point. It's a piece of junk, frankly. If you take a car and you gut it, then that's a race car. It is a tool for a specific use. And if you don't plan on driving that thing daily, that's fine. Or if you're going to strip it to try to cover some micro record, that's fine. But the problem that you're going to run into is if you start getting real aggressive with weight savings, taking out door cards and speakers and window motors and all this other stuff, we're not even going to get into that. I know some people have gone quicker or gone a couple of tenths quicker, whatever the case is. I could not care any less because to me, if you're tearing out dashboards and everything else inside of that car, trying to save that level of weight, then it's not really that car anymore. It's not a car anymore. It's just a racing appliance, if you will. So next on the list would be the latest Gen 6 Camaro. The latest Gen 6 Camaro is basically nitrous, heads, cam, and intake away from being a 9-second car, plus a gear, maybe a converter. You're looking at somewhere around $15,000 to $16,000 realistically for the right, nitrous works, nitrous kit, MSD intake, the cam, everything that you're going to need to get that car to run good, the full exhaust, all of that. That's what it's going to take to run that number. I don't really want to dive too deep into all of these combinations because I'm not going to be able to touch on every point that somebody's going to want to hear. I'm really just here to tell you about the cost. So Hellcat, I don't know, $8,000, and that's a major stretch to get it to that number. Mustang, to do it right, about $22,000, and a Camaro, depending on how you decided to go about it, with an SS, somewhere around 15, from what I've seen and from what my experience in talking to the guys at the track has shown me. Now, a couple of things though that you might want to consider in all of this. Number one, and this is really more to the point for guys that live in areas where this matters. The Hellcat, you don't even have to take the factory catalytic converters off the car. You can run aftermarket catalytic converters on the Mustang and the Camaro, but really, who's going to do that, right? The Hellcat will do it and still be emissions compliant, though, ish, if you know what I mean. So just something kind of to think about. Anyway, let me get to you guys and check in. Let's see. Boosted Emmy's checking in. Got the flex. Let's see. Kay saying, what up, B? Got the arm flexes. I like it. Rick saying, hey, B, glad to see you. Glad to see you too, Rick. Devin saying, this car shortage sucks. I can't even find a scat pack, and every car is going to 3 and 4 cylinders now. Yep. Cal is saying, after a lot of thought, going to trade my 1320 for a Hellcat. I think the 1320 should have been top of the line performer. 6.2 supercharged with drag suspension. Not sure what Mopar was thinking. You know what would have been sick, and this would have been a viable combination too. For the 1320, if you're going to make it naturally aspirated, an aluminum block, maybe a different gear ratio, anything that would have actually added real value to the car aside from what some are saying is a looser converter. It's the truck converter, so I don't know if it's any different than the regular converter, but I don't know that. I mean, it's a neat car, don't get me wrong, and I love them to death. They're fun, but no, I get it. There's a lot of folks that were really upset at the initial offering of that car, myself included. I kept thinking that they could have done a significantly better job at giving us something, especially with the name of 1320. So I get where you're coming from. BB saying, hit that like, guys. What's the driveline weakness in the 6.1 Axle's drive shaft? For the 6.1, there really isn't a weakness to it. If you're going to start really turning up the power, you're going to be looking at the nag 1 will be your weak point. You're going to need to build the nag 1. Mr. Blacktype saying, what's up, Mason? Got the arm flex. Oh, and if you've got a manual car, I mean, you're in pretty good shape. You're probably looking at drive shaft and axles at that point. Just test drove my friend's ZL1 LE, nice car, and Chevy's warranty covers you if you take it to the track. This car has me rethinking the Hellcat. So for a lot of guys, that's something that I really, so the ZL1, you can talk about the ZL1 in the same kind of guise as the Hellcat. However, I would say that it's going to take a little bit more to get the ZL1 deep into the number, primarily because the blower is so little. But you put a Maggie on the ZL1, retune it, bigger injectors, and the complexion of that car changes. I just don't know how robust that 10-speed would be, though, at that point. Arthur saying, good evening to me, Mason. Good evening, Arthur. Dr. is saying, spray the Hellcat and be done. 100 shot would be 100% safe with some tuning on pump gas. And they are 9s consistently. That's true. 1320 saying, just lost to a Shelby GT500. Expected. I'm only 45 horse. Was fun for street racing. Cool. I would hope that that GT500 would have put on at least a good show for you. 1320 is hanging out with Cat. Let's see. Dr. saying, run 9s consistently. Sorry, my phone is jumping the gun. It's posting before I tell it to. So yeah, the big issue though is that 9-second time slip. And the funny thing about all of this is that, you know, 10s are the new 12s, 9s are the new 11s. A fast car is in the 9s, right? Well, the problem with that statement is if you've never owned a 13-second car, you don't know what a fun car is. And the faster you go, it's not necessarily more fun. The safety concerns become extremely high on your list of importance. You got to remember that let's talk about a Hellcat, generic 10-second car, right? Because that's really what the Hellcat is. It is your non-playable character 10-second car. That car will go from 60 to 130 miles an hour, and let's call it 8 seconds. You're going 130 miles an hour, and you won't know it. You won't even notice the acceleration. That car will cruise at 140 miles an hour, and you won't realize it. The interesting thing about these modern cars is that they will numb your senses to the speed that you are traveling. And if you are not used to that, if you're not used to that sensation, it's easy to take for granted the fact that you have survived your trip to 130 or 140 miles an hour. Compound that by doubling the power to go from a 10-second car to a 9-second car, right? Like a deep 9-second car. Could you imagine that? But just understand that you really do have to damn near double the power to the rear wheels to get you to those kind of numbers. So the interesting thing is it's like you strapped another engine to your car to try to go just 1 second faster in the quarter mile, or, you know, a second and a half faster. That's where all these numbers are coming from. And that's why, to me, I'm taking a look at these things and I'm going, my God. I mean, if I wanted to build a 9-second Mustang, and I mean a 9-second Mustang that would be robust enough to go 9s fairly regularly, and be at the drag strip fairly often, I'd have to spend enough money on that thing to where I could buy another car, like a nice used car, for the amount of money that I would sink into that thing to get that number out of it. Would it be worth it? Is it worth it? Well, that's the other side of it. So we've talked about the initial cost. I've kind of touched on what the back end cost is. When you go to sell that car onward. I mean, what, you're going to build this thing and you're going to keep it for the rest of your life? I mean, it's not a life sentence. You can get rid of this thing, but just know that you're going to be into this car for quite a bit of money on the backside. You know, you say, well, it's, you got to pay to play or whatever. Yeah, but this is money we're talking about here, and not an unsubstantial amount of money. I don't know how many people, it seems like on the internet, everybody seems to have $20,000 or $30,000 to just freaking do like that with at the shop and build some kind of a fast, crazy fast car. I don't have those kind of monies, and I don't know of really anybody that has that kind of money to just piss away. But the internet would convince you that everybody seemingly has that kind of disposable income. So on the back end, again, you're going to lose about $10,000, and that's being very generous, but you're going to lose about $10,000 or $11,000 on the back end of your Mustang build. For your Hellcat proposition, you may lose $2,000 or $3,000 out of that. And the Camaro, I don't even know where to start with the Camaro, because their sales aren't all that great. They're a less desirable car. That's just how the market is. It's not me saying it, it's the market saying that. So I don't really know what that would be. And to be God's honest with you guys, I don't see enough. I've only known one Camaro, and that guy even sold that car, that was significantly fast, that anybody really that I ever saw at the drag strip. So that's where I'm talking to these folks. Maybe big deal on the street, but at the drag strip, they're fast as hell. I just don't see them that often. Which is a real bummer, because in that respect, I know I've panned that car pretty hard on a couple of different occasions, but I love that car at the drag strip. It's a great drag package. But again, I just don't see them that often. Now, why am I not going to bring up the 392? Again, it has everything to do with that transmission. The HP 70 just will not deal with the amount of power that you would need to make to get one of those cars legitimately into the 9's. I mean, even if you gutted the thing and pulled a significant amount of power out of it, you're still not going to get enough weight out of the thing to where you're not going to be overloading that HP 70 transmission. From there, you've got to do an HP 90 swap, which is, you know, you're going to be buying a drive shaft anyway. So it's HP 90 swap, drive shaft, all the tuning that's going to go into that. There's so many different pitfalls with the 392 to get it to run those types of numbers. Now, if you want to build a 10-second car, that's a whole different story. And you can do that all day long with the 392. Leave it naturally aspirated and get there even, and it'll be a fun car to drive. But I just would not try to push it any further than that. You're going to be talking about boost. Nobody's going to tear that thing down to add any ring gap. It's just a headache. Oh yeah. And to that point, no, the pistons aren't made out of glass. They just have a tight ring gap and a short ring land. But that's why I'm not even going to bring up the 392 in this conversation, because nobody's really going to do that. They're going to build something that's fun. They're going to build a hot rod, but they're not trying to build a number or car to go chasing numbers. And that basically wraps up all of the more modern cars that you're going to see at the drag strip. Now, I was just at the drag strip last night. Got to hang out with Nathan, the show supporter, and had a lot of fun. And it's interesting too that, you know, Nathan picked up a car that was tuned and built, a Red Eye that Pikes had tuned and built. And the original owner sold it to him. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is, and we have to talk about this, is how long do you plan on keeping this car after you've built it? A lot of guys, not the second owner, but for a lot of folks, the guy that does the build gets rid of these cars fairly quickly once they've gone through the build process. That's why I keep bringing up the money on the backside of these things. What are you really going to lose? And again, looking at the proposition on the Mustang, I mean, you're going to lose about at least $11,000 in that process. Again, in the Hellcat, you might lose $4,000, and that's, again, kind of a stretch there. but a minimum of 11 grand on the Mustang. And you got to be prepared to just throw $11,000 into a bonfire and watch it burn. But a lot of these guys will get the cars, they don't build them right the first time. And this is assuming you're building it right the first time. What I mean by that is I always say build the car from the back to the front, from the bottom to the top. Start out with better axles. Have your drag pack ready to go. Have your exhaust ready to go. Have your drive shafts ready to go. You got to build a transmission. Better build it now. Go ahead and have whatever tuning software that you're going to need on tap. By the way, start learning how to tune a little bit because you got to make your own changes. You can't always get a hold of your tuner. Have everything basically in place before your power adder is purchased. Get good with the car. Become a proficient driver. We'll get to that driver mod here in a second, but get good with the car, understand how the thing's going to react on the drag pack, get some practice time in, and then start throwing power at it. The problem is that way too many, and that's not the sexy way to do it. Nobody gets all worked up about suspension mods. And by the way, I didn't even factor in some suspension mods on that deal for the Mustang. That 22 grand could get to 25, 26, 27 real quick with suspension mods. Just keep that, in the back of your mind. Also, I didn't factor in tires, drag packs or anything like that. That's typically going to add another couple of grand. Anyway, everybody's going to be buying it though, so it kind of cancels itself out. But you're going to have it anyway, so factor in at least 2,500, at least 2 grand, if nothing else, for wheels and tires. That'll put you at 24, by the way, for that Mustang. That's super cheap, easy to make, go fast. Anybody and everybody can just build this 9-second car that's going to cost you to really go the number and to do it safely and to do it reliably and have a durable car. Yeah, it is going to cost you somewhere around 25. Once it's all said and done, if you factor in the tires as well. But anyway, getting back to the point, a lot of guys get rid of these cars fairly quickly. And in fact, the walking around number for trading these things away is about 2 years. The reason for that is because guys get it in their head that they want to build this car, they want this fast contraption, and then they find out really quickly that these things get away from you in a weird way. What invariably ends up happening is somebody will take the car out and it won't be on a drag race setup. It might be on drag radials, might be just on street tires. They'll be cruising down the road and they'll be going out for a cruise, right? And they'll lay into the throttle on one of these cars that's capable of going deep into the 10s. And it starts wall hunting at about 75 miles an hour. I've had it happen to me before. I drive enough of these things, you know that you're going to get into this situation eventually. It's not if, but when. And it just means that you definitely need to be running more tire in whatever scenario that you're in. But it always freaks these guys out and they end up selling it. Or this is the more fun part. They don't build it front to back, or they don't build it back to front. They build the car front to back. And what ends up happening is, dadgummit, hang on, I'm about to gotta put this thing on life support. There we go. What ends up happening is they start blowing things up. Transmissions let go. Axles break. The list starts getting long and the dollar signs start getting big with things that you will break. You will start to find the weak link. That's why you've got to work with guys that have built the combination that you're looking for and tell them, I want to build this the right way. It's got to be durable. That way you don't find yourself in nowadays shops. I mean, they'll say, okay, cool. You go in there and say, I want to run 9's. You go, okay, cool. You need this blower and this thing and this tires, and it'll go 9's. Okay, cool. You build it and you frag your transmission, cook the torque converter, blow up a half shaft, pop a drive shaft. All these things happen and it's real frustrating. The frustration just starts to build and build and build. They get frustrated with the car and they just get rid of it. They're like, I'm done with it. I just want to sell it. Or they do the work to the car and they get beat by a lesser car. or they don't just run off and leave a lesser car, if you will, use the air quotes there again, and they're upset. They think that they've been bamboozled out of their money. Now they're pissed off at the shop and they want to sell the car. Happens to happen all the time. But I use that timeline as a point of reference. If you've bought a car that already has mods, you haven't had to deal with all the headaches, or you haven't had to deal with the realization that, oh my God, this thing is unbelievably fast and scary fast. So another thing that I try to explain to folks is that you are now driving a car. When you start getting into these 10-second cars and mid 10-second, even some 11-second cars, but mid 10-second cars, high 9-second cars, you're now dealing with a car that will absolutely haze the tires if you try to manhandle the throttle going down the freeway at 80 miles an hour. And that's where a lot of these cars, you start running into some pretty significant problems when you start hazing the tires at freeway speeds. Sounds kind of neat right up until it happens. And if something bad happens at those speeds, I mean, you're hazing the tires at 80, but you're still accelerating, and it'll get from 80 to 110 before you can react if something really bad happens. That's why I always say, practice, practice, practice. Get the car to the drag strip, controlled environment, learn the car, get good with the car, play with it, but don't do anything stupid. Learn what that car is going to be capable of. That's part of the cost of building one of these things. You've got to get good with your platform before you throw a ton of power at it, and a lot of guys don't. They don't develop a skill set. So their ego writes a check that their skill set can't cash, and that's when you end up seeing one of these things wadded up because they're trying to roll race with somebody on the wrong tire in the wrong environment. It happens. Oh, and one other thing that happens to happen, even if you build the thing perfectly, even if you build it from the back to the front, from the ground to the top, spend the money where you're supposed to on all the durability mods, guess what? It's a machine, it's mechanical, and it is by its own nature fallible. They can still break. You can still pop one of these things. If you have an injector fail, if you have poor fuel quality, if you have start picking issues, slight manufacturing tolerance issues that cause that thing to fail, you can still blow one of these things up even if you've gone through all the right motions. And then the clock goes right back to square one. What did you blow up? Oh, you blew up the engine? Oh, shoot. You know how much a Coyote engine costs? It's crazy expensive. And that's got to be part of the cost of the build too. So for everybody that's always harping on the fact that Mustangs are so easy to build and they're cheap to build and anybody can do it, tell that to the guys that blow their stuff up at the drag strip. Tell them how cheap and easy it was to have a 9-second car. You might find that they are regretting that quote unquote so-called, if you will, cheap method of going fast, because cheap is never cheap long term. It's the house odds, and the house never loses if given enough time. So anyway, let me catch in with you guys. Slash is saying hello. Alex saying, what up, B? I'm actually at a Mopar Challenge night at Albuquerque Drag Strip right now. Very nice. Perfect timing on your part because I'm getting my ass kicked by these amazing builds. I may have been involved in a couple of those builds. Dad's Garage saying, good to see you're home safe. Yes, sir. Last night was a lot of fun. Car did beautifully. I'll get into how the car did here in just a minute. Dr. Dave saying, come get this laptop, and I got a little 100 wet fog shot kit for it and try it with Revlon. See if we can't get her in the 980s. Bet we could. Saying, hook it up, wait for the DA. Why not? Nothing to lose. He's saying, have you thought about porting the blower on Revlon? I see where there are a few people with Joker's blowers making another 20 to 40 horsepower. So here's the thing. when it comes to porting the supercharger, I've seen what passes as porting for some of those superchargers. There's nothing getting done in there. I haven't seen, apparently I haven't seen one of Joker's ported blowers, but I have seen what some other shop had said that it wasn't ported at all. And in fact, I'll take it a step further. It looked like they just run a cartridge roll over the thing. I mean, it was just like, and it was part of the snout too. And I'm looking at the snout, they didn't even enlarge the snout for a ported throttle body. So, or for that larger throttle body. So I don't know. No, if I wanted to go fast, I wouldn't build a Hellcat. I'm not going to put a 100 shot on it. It'd be a waste of my time. I'm probably going to, if I want to build a 9-second car, I'm going to build an 8-second car. I'm not going to build a 9-second car. It's just not worth my time, especially when I'm having too much fun running 10s. And I think that when, it's, okay. And the funny thing is that it's just nitrous, and I'm known for throwing nitrous on practically everything, but I'm having too much fun with this thing. And I already know what I can get out of the car. I mean, really, I'm just an E85 and a tune, E85 conversion and a tune away from running 9. So it's not really that. And that's on stock boost, by the way, with good air. For me, it's more about doing a lot more with less. I'm already getting accused of having a 50 shot on the car, pulleys, all kinds of different stuff I'm getting touched up with on that car. And it makes me laugh. I mean, it's flattering that folks think that I've done that to the car, but that thing is at the drag strip every weekend. Anybody is happy to, more than welcome, and I'm happy to have them do it. Walk up to the car and flashlight that thing all you want. There ain't nothing crazy going on with it. In fact, there's not even anything interesting going on with the tune in that car. So, but anyway, since I'm talking about it, it went a 1056 with a 1 and a 1056 with a 2 last night. You have to fact check me. If you go to your HRP Slips app, you can, I'm car 1122 this year. So if you look up 1122, you'll see the passes that I made last night. And the two best were a 56 with a 1, a 56 with a 2. I don't even know if the car went a 1060 all night. I think it went a 1058 was the first hit. Maybe it's a 1056. Anyway, the car was running basically 1050s. I made 3 passes last night, and like clockwork, bam, 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 right on cue, running 1050s. So DA last night was between 2800 flat, like 2800 exactly, and 2550, I think. Anyway, you'd have to go back and take a look at the slips, but anyway, that's where the car's sitting right now. And touching it up with a buckshot, it's too nice of a car, and I'm not going to ruin it. So, Dr. Duke saying, I agree, 35 grand, my truck leaves my ownership. I'll take a very high loss, but not going to pass up this market. And yes, it's built from the back to the front, built crew cab that makes big power fast. I love it. Absolutely. BB saying, a lot of guys make the mistake of not getting a good daily driver. I have a CRV, fun little daily, by the way. That's good on gas and Honda reliable, so I can afford to break the Challenger even if it's a mild build. Well, see, now we haven't talked about that yet, and I'm glad you brought it up, baby, because that's another direction when it comes to these builds that you have to take into account. Now, it's again kind of a universal across the board. Don't mod your daily. You guys have heard me say, don't mod your daily for years now. But the reason why is because these things are making a ton of power and they are going to break at some point. You need some kind of contraption to get you to and from the office, right? I mean, it's you can say, oh, I daily that car. Well, it's better to say I could daily it and not blow the thing up in a roll race or at the drag strip, and then try to figure out how you're going to get around for the next 3 months while your car's getting put back together. Part of the cost of the build, you just need to take this and and just know that it's a fact. Part of the cost of your build is going to be a cash car. You've got to be able to go out and get yourself a CRV, a Civic, some old pickup truck, you know, a little SUV, you know, like a cheap old Yukon or something, anything to get you around town, and you don't have to rely on your hot rod to be your primary mode of transportation. Anything can happen, and if you lose that car and you can't get to work, again, that's going to be a bit of a problem. So part of the cost of the build, you know, I didn't factor this in, but it's something that I always talk about. Get you a cash car, get you an old S10 that's never going to let you down. She's going to fire up and run. AC blows cold, heater blows hot. You know, something like that. Ain't no sin in any of that. And again, it doesn't have to be anything great. It just has to be something that works, gets you back and forth, and you know, you don't care if it gets bumped into, you don't care if it gets scratched or whatever. It's not supposed to be that, you know, it's not supposed to be that garage queen. It's a daily. And by the way, there's a lot of folks that after having, and this happens to happen quite a bit too, guys will have all this money tied up in their hot rod. They'll have this daily, right? They'll have this, usually it's a truck, and or it's a, you know, some truck variant SUV, or it might be a Civic or something like that. And you end up with this, like this hate relationship that you have with your hot rod, but your daily, this old beat up daily that all you do is change oil and fluids in once every 6 months, seemingly, just keeps on trucking, you know, and the good vibes are coming from your daily and not from your hot rod. Again, it's a weird way to look at it, but a lot of guys end up getting a little bit jaded because they're never spending any time with their hot rod. They're always driving around their beater, and they're creating more memories in their beater. You know, they going to, you know, you got French fries all over the place, burgers, all this other stuff. You just doesn't matter. You develop this relationship with this contraption that is a lot more comfortable. So anyway, it's just kind of funny. Guys will be like, God, this thing sucks. They end up getting rid of their hot rod, and they'll pick up something like a Jeep, you know, some kind of an older car, whatever it is. And they'll just motor that thing around and not even worry about having a fast car anymore, because it can be such a headache and such a money pit. Let's see, Dr. Div saying the Ram has a built engine, studded top, bottom, all forged, built trans, Circle D, multi-disc, 410 rear with all the best posi money can buy, roll bar that meets spec, and harness that are spec. Nice. All the suspension mods minus shocks, because the stock shocks gave me the best quarter mile results. Nice. Yeah, so you know what I went through. Yeah. See, I'm just ready for a C6, C7, or 8 for sure. And that's, you know, again, you know, when you start getting that kind of money tied up in these cars, I will say this, that the aggravation level can really start going up. Oh, yeah, and remember when I was talking about learn to drive the car, learn the car, practice with the car, practice, practice, practice. This is a scenario that will end up seeing owners of these hot rods get rid of their cars actually quicker than you might think. And what happens is guys will get the cars and they will get it to the drag strip, and the damn thing just won't hook. For whatever reason, bad track prep, lots of reasons why you can have a kind of a funky night at the track. But one of those things is just having bad experiences when you do drive the car. You know, you hit wide open throttle and the car starts to wall hunt a little bit. That scares guys. You know, you take the car to the drag strip, it doesn't hook up. Track prep's bad for a month straight. Guys get real impatient with stuff like that. And again, Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace is infested with people's built hot rods that they just want to get rid of. Blows my mind. Nick's checking in. Say, what up, B? Been a while. Hope all is good. All is good. Nick saying, perfect title, The Cost to Go 9's. I can tell you, Pike's Performance got the red eye running great. Yeah, that car runs real good. And the other thing too, is, talking about the red eye. By the way, what's up, Nick? You're talking about a car that is so overbuilt from the factory that, a lot of the cost to go 9's has already been covered in that thing. The gear, the twin pumps, there's a lot you can do with a red eye just because you already have the parts available and ready to go. The frustration when it comes to a lot of guys that don't seem to understand just how much it will cost on the back end. That's really almost more to the point than how much does it cost on the front end. And again, with the Mustangs, you got to get rid of that thing. You're going to be losing a ton of money, whereas the Mopars, you just don't, because the amount of money you had to put into them isn't all that great, and they are so durable. And these modifications that you do to a Hellcat or to a red eye, they don't affect the durability of the car. We've had regular Hellcats, Bravo packages, just pulleys and E85. Paul's car is a good example of this. Racer X's car is a good example of this. That car's got hundreds with an S. I mean, not just close to 100 passes. That car has 100 cars, probably got 300 or 400 passes on it, and practically bomb-proof. So that's where what the Mopars get you. I guess that's really the overall value here. You don't see Mopars break the way that you see other platforms break, and a lot of times the car will break the will of the owner before it itself breaks mechanically. Whereas with these other platforms, it's almost invariably the other way around. And again, it's got to be built the right way. Boost is Timmy saying, making a lot of power now, for sure. Dr. Doe saying, dude, I'll give you the kit. Just throw a Dr. Doe sticker on the car. Yeah, no, and she's going to stay how she is. I appreciate it, though. No, it's going to remain. It's nice little 1050 self, and I have too much fun with that car. And the other side of it too is that car is representative of a street to strip type of a setup where you really could daily my car. There's nothing about my car that would keep you from being able to daily it. It's even got factory catalytic converters on it, for crying out loud. The thing with it is that you can swap tires and get it to the drag strip, and it is, again, very representative of a modern street and strip car. And that's what I like about it. It is walking in lockstep with the guys with the Mustangs that aren't trying to throw a boatload of boost at their car and are looking to build about a 1070, 1050 car out of their Mustang. Same goes for the Camaros, ZL1s, all the vets, where you've gone and, pulleyed up a ZL1, you've gone heads, cam, intake, and maybe a small shot on an SS, or you've just gone, FBO, full bolt-ons on an SS, a little bit of a shot of dope. That's kind of the range that I want to be in. I start throwing nitrous on that car, I'm going to start finding weak links that I really don't want to find. And so, yeah, it wouldn't really hurt anything, and it would certainly put it, it would definitely at that point be about a 960-ish car, 970 for sure. But for me, it's almost complicating the issue. I'd love to hit it with a little bit of nitrous, but it takes it just outside of what I want to do with that car. Alex is saying, I've been running mid-13s in my 8-speed 392 all night, though I'm at 6,000 foot elevation, so that explains that. And I have 275 tires, Nitto 420s. They're not even sport tires like they're luxury SUV tires. Yeah, that's not doing you any favors. But if you're running mid-13s, man, I mean, in those conditions, dude, that's actually not that bad. Alex is saying cheap dealership. Yeah. Kurt's saying, talk about AMC, Sunoco, Javelin, Mark Donahue, and Roger Penske. Oh, that's 1969 right at you. Dude, first of all, you know I'm a big AMC fan. Love me some AMXs. Javelins are a lot of fun. It's a Javelin, if you don't know about AMC, it's basically AMC's answer to the Mustang or the Camaro. Really cool car. It's just a shame those things never really took off. In fact, I was begging, when I lived in Northern California, I found a 69 AMX. I think it was 69. 69 AMX, a 390 car. And there was also 68 390 car, a 69 401 car. I think that's how it worked out. Anyway, I was trying to buy those, and those guys would not get rid of them, and I was bummed out. And that's one of those things where not fast, but super fun. But yeah, Mark Donahue and Roger Penske from the old SECA days. That was actually really cool time. And back then it was Mustangs, AMC, AMX, AMC Javelin. You had the Camaro in there. You had the Mercury Cougar in there. A bunch of really just unbelievably cool cars. Yeah, obviously the Boss 302 comes from that. Was it ZZ4 302 from Chevy? You had from Mopar, obviously you had the AAR Cuda, the AAR Challenger, the Cuda, all of those cars. It's awesome SECA racing back then. It's a shame that there's nothing like that today, but there's just not I don't know that there's really the audience for it anymore, but that would be really cool. But the neat thing about those cars is that they were built on existing platforms. You know, granted, yes, they had suspension mods and all this other stuff. Obviously, the engines weren't the same. In competition, you could not go above 302 cubic inches. Hence the Boss 302 and the 302 Chevy small block. But the interesting thing about those cars is that they were factory platforms that were modified. And I'd love to see something like that make a comeback. I just don't know. I don't think that we ever will. Boosted Emmy's saying I missed his question. Really? Oh, here we go. I didn't see this. Would drag springs help the 60 foot on my Hellcat? I am spinning some with the DBRs. I am making a lot more power now. I don't know that they would. You've got guys that are running mid-9s with the DBRs. A lot of it's going to come down to track prep, getting the pressures right. I prefer anywhere between 20 and 22. The track prep is okay. The track temperature is not ice cold. 22 seems to work pretty well for a lot of the guys that are running mid-9s. You can go with drag springs. They will certainly help a little bit. One of the issues that you run into, though, is when you start messing with independent rear suspension cars is that softer is not better for the rears. In fact, you might try running the car in sport mode to try to stiffen up the rear shocks a little bit so that you're not, if you're running the car in street mode now, you might be compressing that thing, the rear suspension a little bit too much. And when you do, you got to remember it's independent rear suspension, so it's on an arc. It's not the suspension is not up and down like in a solid rear axle, and you always have a solid footprint no matter what when the car squats. In an independent rear, it bows. So when that thing bows, you get less footprint on the ground, and that can cause the car to light the tires up a little bit. So suspension settings can come into play there. Try that if you're not already doing it, and see if that helps you at all. But drag springs do help, but you've got to have the right setup all the way around. But again, man, we've run 130 60 foots with stock suspension and haven't had an issue with it. And that's been on DBRs too. Let's see. Bear with me here. Mike G saying greetings from the lower circle of hell here in Washington. 101 today, 118 on Tuesday. I hope everyone's keeping cool. No doubt, man. You guys are getting cooked. Let's see. Mike G saying, I have an idler that has little raised bumps all over the surface. Coworker tells me these thermoplastic pulleys will just do that sometimes, but do you think it might be a bigger problem? Saying his belt and everything else looks perfect around it. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be an issue. A lot of times you see that. My idlers, I actually replaced my idlers with the TBA machine idlers. I just didn't like the way they look. In fact, I had those here. I was using them as paperweights at one point. The stock idlers just end up looking like ass. So yeah, it's not that big of a deal, I wouldn't think. Oh, Dad's is saying, when I was a kid, my dad had a Hornet, and his aunt had a Javelin, and uncle a Gremlin. Those were always fun. I always liked AMC cars. They never really got the love that they deserved, in my opinion, if they just would have had a little bit more development. You look at the 390, the 401, you can make some crazy power with those things, but there just wasn't enough of those cars made, and they never really took off. So the aftermarket support's a little bit shy for them, but still, you can make a bunch of power with those things. Dr. Dude saying, I'm out for the night. Love you guys. All have fun. If you need anything, hit the shop. Hit up the shop. We'll take care of you. Offering a sale on the cams right now. Very nice. Everyone just went up, so take advantage of it while you can. That's true. Costs have gone up this year. A lot of transportation costs have gone up. So definitely take a look at that. And I'll give you a shout tomorrow, man. I got to get with you on a couple of things there, Dr. Diff. But one of the things I just wanted to illustrate with this chat, though, is, I talk a lot about doing things right, the safety aspect of this. The cost thing comes up fairly regularly. And to do it right, and to do the it in that statement is always the debatable portion, isn't it? I mean, I just want to go fast. So you put a blower on a car, and then you start finding weak links, and then, it's a piece of shit. I don't like this thing. It's garbage. It's not. You just have to build it the right way. Now, notice that throughout all this conversation, I haven't brought up anything on LS coming into this. We talked a little bit of LT, but the reality is I haven't talked anything LS. The reason why I haven't talked about anything LS is because of all of the different combinations and of all of the different platforms. Yes, the LS is the cheapest to go fast. However, it is not the cheapest to go fast if you build them the right way. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, you can find Yukons in salvage yards or on Craigslist or anywhere for sale, and they only cost about $3 or $4 grand. Take that Yukon, gut it, basically sell the rest of the thing back to a junkyard, get all your engine, transmission, wiring harnesses, and everything else out of the car. And then from there, you still have to build an engine, right? You still have to build the rest of the combination if you're doing like a LS swap, which in this case is usually the case, or you just go out and buy a truck and make the truck fast, which is what a lot of guys do because it's easy to work on. And I'm really getting down into the lower cost element of this. But if I were to do something, what would I do? What would I build? Of all the new stuff that's out there, now that I've said I'm not going to do anything else with Revlon, And I'm going to keep that car as it is because I just love having that car. I just love driving that car. But what would I build for the amount of money? I'd build a truck. Down here, trucks, LS 5.3 or 4.8, it doesn't matter. Trucks are fairly inexpensive. You can pick the truck up for $6,000, build a transmission for a couple of grand, and put a converter in it with a gear, and you're kind of already halfway there. There are plenty of cheap turbo kits out there on the market. Next thing you know, you've got a truck that's going deep into the 11s or high 10s. For not much money, you start really turning up the boost. And then from there, you've got a built transmission and a rear end. Go as fast as you want to go, right? 9s aren't that hard. Down here in Houston, Southeast Texas, place is infested with 9-second trucks. And it is as easy as get the truck, build it, turbo, fuel system, trans built, go fast, blow it up, put a new engine in it, and go from there. But the problem with that mentality is that you're planning on the thing blowing up, and that it's cheap to fix something if it's cheap to buy the parts. But if you're buying parts, you're spending money. Is that really the right way to go? The walking around smart value on that is, look, put together a somewhat decent short block in the LS. You really can't find a bad one, I don't think. Build the thing to where it'll manage the boost, and it'll make 9-second or 10-second passes indefinitely. But there are always alternate methods on going fast. And I guess the point here is, we've talked about Hellcats being about 60 grand. If you find a used one, to get a 9-second car out of it. It's pretty easy to do. And really you could do it for less than, that 9 grand that I was talking about. But again, we're talking about soup to nuts on that car. The Mustang, the walking around number, honest to God, is going to be somewhere around 25. That includes wheels and tires. And that $25,000 that you spend does not include the $30,000 that you spend on the car. So you're still looking at $50,000 to $55,000 minimum, even if you bought a cheap used Mustang in the process. Let's hope it stays together. You already know where I'm going with that. We already covered it. The Camaro is the Camaro, but the thing is 55 grand, and anybody can build the Mustang, right? Provided you've got the money and you really want to cover these numbers. Whereas an old pickup truck, you're into that thing for, in total, $15,000 at the absolute most. And the thing runs 9s. Basically, your grandkids are running 9s in that truck. That's really the idea. If you're looking to go 9s on a budget, there's only really one way to go. If you want to go fast with class, get you a Mopar. And any other direction you want to go is just going to be that much more cash out of pocket, because keep in mind, you are not probably going to be spending cash on those purchases. For a lot of the guys that buy the Mustangs because they're cheap to modify, well, they're not spending cash on that car. They're financing that car. They're also probably putting all of their mods on credit cards, because if you're talking about a car being cheap to build, rarely did anybody ever pay for their modifications in cash, okay? It took a whole lot of credit cards to get them there. And then you've got compounded interest on top of that. So now you're talking about, God, I hope you're paying it off every month, or paying it off as soon as the bill comes in, because I don't even want to think about what compound interest is on $20-something thousand worth of modifications. And the longer you wait to pay it off, the higher that debt is going to be, man. And again, I know that this isn't something sexy to talk about. Nobody likes hearing about nobody wants to know how the sausage is made, right? Everybody just wants to see the results, but they don't want to know how we got here. And there are a lot of ugly truths to this. And by the way, you want to run the math back on this. You do $55,000 in total for that Mustang. Let's call it 50 just for the sake of argument, but half the cost of that thing is in modifications. And you've got a 5% loan on 25 grand that you're financing. Plus you've got a, call it a 20% loan on your APR on your credit card for the mods. And that's putting it super, super conservatively, by the way, guys. That's kind of blending introductory offers with how the world actually works with those cards. And that 25 grand can turn into a debt of 32, 33 grand before it's all said and done, even if you're making a bunch of extra payments. So now the Hellcat is cheaper than the Mustang to build. Isn't that weird? Like you bought your used Hellcat for 50, 52 grand, put 5 or 6 grand into it. You got this 9-second car that's by rights cheaper than building the same ET capable car in a Mustang when you build it in that respect. And when I say in that respect, I mean in the reality of how people build things. Again, worked at a shop. This is not me working for Pikes Performance wasn't the first time that I had worked at a shop. And you know, one thing that we did do, I'm still associated with that shop, is pride ourselves on the fact that we try to take care of the customers and we don't really hammer them for full hour value for labor and try to give them good deals on parts and everything else, paying for a lot of expertise. It's not cheap, but you still have to pay for that expertise and that extra level of care and the fact that they're going to stand behind you. A lot of folks don't do that. Something you take for granted. When you work for guys that are as good as those like, you know, Alex Bites and Dr. Dip, they're going to stand behind you no matter what. But you're paying for their expertise, not necessarily for their time alone. And so it blows my mind. There's always somebody trying to work an angle or work a deal, and you know, I just don't want to spend that much. I want to spend 4 grand instead of 5 grand. Okay, sure, but you know, you start cutting corners. That's the other thing. It happens to happen a lot. Guys want to just cut corners and then complain when their shit breaks. It's like there's a special level of stupid you have to get to fucking go down that path. But again, see it all the time. Sovereign saying LS swap Geo Metro. Somebody's done it, I promise you. Dr. Just saying, what up, Frostbite? Still one of my favorite colors. Frostbite saying 10-second NA stock block RAM is fairly easy. Boost or nitrous, very easy. Yes, it is. 10s isn't the problem. It's the 9s that seem to get you into trouble. Sovereign saying Mopar dropping power at you like a ton of bricks for sure. Oh, Carr saying, hey B, Erie PA, check it in. Very nice. Glad you're keeping it real and us in check. Man, I'm just saying what it is. That's the problem. Nobody's talking about this stuff. When it comes to the costs, the real cost, not only the front end cost, but the back end cost of modifications. The real cost, not only financially, but emotionally. These are the things that I see. These are the problems that I have personally seen and run into. And when you don't mention these things, it's almost taboo, really, to talk about this in certain circles. But the reality is that when you start spending your hard-earned money, you are living in that moment, in that second. You've got to think about this from all angles. And I've seen guys spend money that they do not have to try to get some number out of a car. And I'll put it to you like this. I have talked guys out of spending tens of thousands of dollars. Not because I didn't want their money, but I just knew that even with what they were doing or what they were trying to do to these cars, I knew that it wasn't gonna. You'd still have a dissatisfied customer. It'd still be somebody that wouldn't be happy with the results because, again, 9's are expensive to get to, and when you're trying to play let's make a deal with a shop on getting you there, the shop, the minute you leave, 2 minutes later somebody else is walking in the door wanting the same thing you're wanting. But I have literally told guys, this is not where you need to be going with this car. This is how you get yourself killed. And just looking out for guys. This is, I can see that you want this, but in 6 months you're not going to want it. It's almost like peer pressure drags them in. But anyway, I was sitting there trying to calculate. I'm thinking of just a few instances, and each one of those instances would have been about $15,000-ish. And those guys ended up buying Hellcats and spent the money wisely and ended up spending close to that amount of money anyway, but they ended up buying Hellcats and ended up being a lot happier with their car. So just how it is. Oh, Hilton Mode saying that's why I'm waiting on my RAM to be paid off before I go crazy with mods. Yep. Dr. Div saying my boys are in, so I'll stick around for a few more minutes. I'll be here until 11. Very nice. Summer Night saying, what kind of fuel does Amy like? Fuel. Likes all of it. Dr. Div's hanging out with Frostbite. Frostbite's hanging out with Dr. Div. Let's see. Spear Fit is saying, finally got red eye. Any mods to get to 800 from 797? Yeah, just wait for the weather to change. That's all you need to do. No, congrats on that, man. You're going to love that car. Love the red eyes, man. The thing that people don't realize about red eyes, yeah, they're more expensive than a Hellcat, but you get basically a built short block and twin pumps already from the factory. So, if you wanted to go E85, the car is basically set up and ready for you to do it. Uh, 1320's checking in, seeing if Catless is still in Summer Night. Say best ever name for a red eye is Visine. I love that. That's awesome. Very true. I like that. It's very awesome. Nick saying, you've seen my Whipple 10R80 at HRP plenty. Wasn't cheap for sure. Always fun though. So yeah, and that's kind of, one of the things that we talk about is it's not cheap. To do it right, it's not only not cheap, but it's infuriating to this is the other thing. And Nick kind of drives me to this point. His Whipple 10R80 is gorgeous car. It's one of my favorite cars out there. Car hauls ass. But one of the things about it, which is it drives me nuts, is there is a lot of money that is spent. Transmission, suspension, driveline bits, the whole bit. And there's a lot of money spent. There's also a lot of frustration in getting there. And especially when you start chasing tenths of seconds, the frustration can mount even further. And one of the issues that I know some of the Mustang guys have is guys say, oh, you can build it for that. It's cheap. It's just super cheap to build. And these guys are going, man, I got like a book of bills on this car that I've had to pay to get to this point. It's not cheap and it's not easy, but it's done right. And the big difference is when it's done right, the cars last a long time. They make pass after pass after pass after pass, and everything is awesome. But it's the guys that go out there and try to do it on the cheap and then puke liquid shit all the way down the track because they blow something up in the process of it, because they didn't build it right. And it ruins the night for the guys that they're sitting there saying, I built my car, it ran a 990 and all I did was put a blower on it. That's the guy that blows up. That's the guy that hoses down the track with transmission fluid or ventilates the block. That's the guy that does that. And so, and the other thing too is this, you know, for the guys that are grown up in this and for the guys that know better, they do know better. And they just, all of us just kind of look at the folks that don't build it right. And we just go, God dang it, please just don't ruin my night, man. I just want to make 3 passes and go get a freaking hot dog, man. I just don't want to be screwed on this deal. Anyway. But I feel you, brother. 13 saying, I want a Hellcat also. What you get out, asking what you got out the 1320. I love the 1320s. I just think that each car has its place, man. And here's the problem with the 1320. And here's the problem really with all of them. So we talked about, by the way, what a stock Hellcat runs at the drag strip. We didn't talk about what a stock Mustang runs at the drag strip. Didn't talk about what a stock Camaro runs at the drag strip, much less a 1320. So it's a lot easier to get a car that runs 10s to go 9s. But when you're talking about a Mustang that runs mid 12s, and you put it on a drag pack, let's say you run an 1190. In good air, you might run an 1180. That's just what I've seen at the drag strip over and over and over and over and over again. Camaro will be about that number. None of them want anything to do with the Scat Pack or a 1320, though. 1320 at the drag strip, in really good air, I know that Ray's cars, both of his 1320s went 1140s at Moparmageddon. But it's even in crap air, those things are still practically 1190, 12.0 cars, even in really crappy air, or close to it. Let's put it to you that way. Single seat cars for sure will be in that range. Hell, I know that because there's one at the track last 2 weeks I was there. Cool guy, by the way. But stock 1320 with a tire. It's a single seat car. But anyway, the point of this is that, yeah, the 392 is quicker at the drag strip. We're not talking about roll racing here. We're talking about drag strip stuff. Yes, the 1320, even the Scat Pack is going to be quicker by about a tenth or two. But after that, it's all over with, roll racing or anything on the street. It's going to be tough for those cars versus a Mustang or a Camaro. So's asking, ProCharge over Supercharger. ProCharger seems pretty good if you're not building up the bottom end to crack the boost. 6 and 7 should hold up. So ProCharger, supercharging, you are literally, supercharging is a verb. You are literally supercharging the engine with air. You get blowers, superchargers, this, that, they're all interchangeable. So centrifugal supercharger versus a positive displacement supercharger. I don't know if y'all heard that. Whatever that was sounded healthy. For any vehicle, for that matter, a centrifugal supercharger is going to be easier on your driveline, easier on your transmission. Because you don't get that big hit of torque down low with a centrifugal supercharger. It's very manageable. It's a safer way to build power than any of the other boost methods, whether it's turbo or positive displacement supercharger. And the reason for that is it is a much more controllable power delivery. And really, once you get the thing spooled up, it's going to be making a lot of power. And realistically, the difference between the peak power between a centrifugal and turbo is fairly close. You've got some parasitic losses with the centrifugal that are going to eat up about a pound of boost or so to drive that blower. But the thing about turbos is turbos have a weird elastic effect that can sneak up on you on the street. This isn't really a drag race thing, but you're asking about, which one is safer and how are they safer. Turbos are softer on the block itself because you're not putting a lot of pressure on that front bearing. And that front bearing's not getting hit with vibrations either. But that being said, the turbo at half throttle, you can be in it, and at half throttle, you're really not doing anything. And next thing you know, you get this hit of, an extra 100 foot-pounds of torque that maybe you didn't really want or weren't asking for. It's just something that it's a quirk of turbos that you learn it. I mean, it's not like it's not going to scare the hell out of you. It's not like it's uncontrollable. It's controllable. Of course it is. But it's just a way that the cars drive. And again, when turbos come into boost, turbos, you can get full boost at partial throttle with a turbo, just like you can with a positive displacement supercharger. You cannot get that with a centrifugal supercharger. It's one of the reasons why they're more controllable. A lot of guys prefer a centrifugal supercharger if they're doing road racing, playing around with the thing on the street. It's just they're easier to manage. So anyway, but yeah, they are easier for the most part. Oh, and then Sovereign, and 6 to 7 pounds should hold up fine. Yeah, on a stock cam car, 6 to 7 pounds is not a big deal. Just don't get greedy with the boost. Don't get greedy with timing. Don't start thinking that, well, if I run E85, it's going to be safer, all this other stuff. Just stick, again, with the recipe. You guys hear me talk about sticking with the recipe when it comes to Mopars all the time. Really, with any of these platforms, that's true. But with Mopars, it's especially true. Lower boost is great. 6 to 7 pounds of boost is going to get you a peak of about 135 extra horsepower to the rear wheels. And with a stock cam, it's going to feel good. It's going to run fine. But just know that it's not going to get you that snappy hit down low. It's just not going to work like that. All of your business is going to be taken care of above about 4,000 RPM. That being said, yes, all things considered, pump gas, 91 or 93 octane, that 6 to 7 pounds of boost should be just fine for you. That 1320 is ain't sweeter than honey. Talking about that 1320. Frostbite's hanging out with Dr. Diff. Dr. Diff knew somebody that put a 5.3 in a Geo. That'd be sick. HU37 saying modify with your head, not over it. Again, I've said this so many times, man. Be honest with yourself as far as what level your skill set is set to. And don't think that you're better than what you are. I've known a lot of guys that thought that they were better than what they were, only to be surprised by an immediate failure that they just didn't see coming. And what I mean by failure is their skill set failed to deliver on the promise that they thought that it had made for them. That's been in several different walks of life, by the way. But the thing you've got to remember is when you start putting this kind of money into the car, why wouldn't you learn your platform and learn what this thing's going to do in, let's just say, less than normal situations? Because and you'll hear me talk about get out there and play with the car, learn the car. 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, when nobody's on the road. I'm not saying to do this, but I've heard of people that get out there and practice launching and practice some drift maneuvers and things like that at those times. The other thing is, we're talking about the old school SCCA racing. Find your local SCCA autocross and get out there, and that's a perfect opportunity to learn vehicle dynamics. That's what we did. My sisters accomplished SCCA pilots, if you will. I used to love doing SCCA events. My dad and I have functioned as instructors in SCCA events. It's a lot of fun, and it teaches you how to drive a car, and if the thing starts getting nuts, how to get out of that situation. It's extremely important, and it's kind of turning into a bit of a lost, a lost art anyway. Get out there and learn that platform. Let's see. Dr. Diff's hanging out with Sovereign. Let's see. Spear saying, is there really different internal parts on the Red Eye? Yes. To make it easy to mod from a regular Hellcat. The thing is regular Hellcat, you can make obscene power with a regular Hellcat. It's just that the Red Eye is a step above obscene. So you've got better pistons, better rods, the same crankshaft. The camshaft is about the same. The Red Eye cam has got a little bit more duration, but not much. Same intake valve events, but a little bit different on the exhaust side. But you do have twin pumps in the tank, which help. And obviously the supercharger is a little bit bigger. But aside from, and the injectors are bigger too. So there are some things that are a little bit different with the Red Eye that you don't get with the Hellcat. That's not to say that the Hellcat is inferior though. I gotta keep making that point because, guys, I have seen Hellcats take some abuse that no machine in its right mind should have been able to survive through. And the Hellcats always perform great. You know, they're heavy like a tank. They're built like a tank. They're strong like a bull. And they, for all of the things you can say to try to, elbow and rib a Hellcat, at the end of the day, the damn things just perform really well. And yeah, they're heavy, but they've got heavy duty parts on them. So they're going to be a little bit heavy. But yeah, the Red Eye does have some upgraded components. Summer Night saying, boom! Dr. Div's talking about that LS swap. It said cost him a small fortune because the LS was new. He graduated in 04 and it was fast. Some comp cam in it with 100 shot of dope. He removed the springs from the struts and it was low road like shit scraped. Funny. Kenny Seaton saying, what up, Macy? Got the fist bump. I like it. Frostbite saying, love my Torque Storm centrifugal supercharger. Great air mover. I like the Torque Storm a lot. It's got a little bit more of an aggressive impeller, and that helps it make quite a bit more mid-range than what you might see from other centrifugal superchargers. Very similar to what the Powerdyne, kind of the same value, the same idea as the Powerdyne blowers were back in the day. So saying I'm running the Joker cam pretty choppy when I cold start. That's actually that's an understatement. Yes, it is. So saying props after the car broke it in a bit. Yep. Saying 2900 DA running 1350 on Nittos this week. Pretty happy when the weather is crappy, dude. That's awesome for bad weather. That's a 12-second car. Doctor is saying, if I get 10,000 subs on my channel, I'll do a compound 76, 75 precision. That's on it blown into a Torque Storm on my truck for a compound setup. That would be a fun combination. Although I would argue that there are better combos out there, but that would be kind of a fun one to get it spooled up. Doctor is saying the Ram did 22 pounds of boost this last weekend, 64% injector duty cycles. So we're going to go for 90% mark on these 127 pounders. Nice. Turn her up till she pops, right? Well, guys, look, I'm coming up on about an hour and a half. I've got to jump off here, but I want to thank each and every one of y'all for hanging out with me. Absolutely could not do this without you guys. It's my privilege to spend time with y'all on a Saturday. But with that, y'all be safe out there, guys. If you're going to send it, don't bend it. Keep her shiny side up. And with that, that is a wrap on this one. Y'all have a great one. Adios.